Hey, here's a quick video on 1.2.1 called How Can I Represent It? And really it's all about multiple representations. So today we are going to talk a little bit about how we can represent pennies. In class we ended up using Cheerios because at least we could just throw them out when we're all done. But today we'll talk pennies on this document. So here's something that I flashed up on the screen, and I ask you very quickly, how many pennies do you have? Well, if you pause the video, you can eventually figure out that there's indeed 47 pennies on here. But I think the more important part is don't you find this to be a rather poor way of assembling 47 pennies for us to try to figure out? So the discussion leads itself to what's a different representation, a different way, right? A different representation or way for us to put 47 pennies. And so what I've done is I've put 47 pennies right here. Put them as little dots on there. And if you count that or whatever, right, you can see that I have, you can see that on that left side I have 6 pennies, and on the top I have 2, 4, 6, 8. Well, I don't know. I guess I could say that up to here, right, I have 7, and then I have some, I got a couple here. Basically, I'm missing one, right? I'm missing one. I'm going to just take that off for now, I think would be best. So that's one way to represent those 47 pennies. Well, I decided to show another way of representing those 47 pennies. And then I also showed them in another capacity. And these are all examples that we would have seen probably at school at some point if I would have had that, right? So the question is can we represent this with this as a diagram, words, and numbers? Now, I'm more particularly interested in this setup, right? So what would the diagram be for something like this? So what I'm going to do is, and I should say that these 3 setups right here that we have, none of them are right. They're all right. They're all different. It's just what representation works best for you. If I were to give you time to work on representing 47, you could clearly come up with an alternative or a different method to do that. You could have had a big row of 47 of them, right? But we wanted to make the quickest one. Now, what's quickest for you is not as quick for others. It just depends on what works for you. But let's put our attention back on taking each of these pictures and creating a diagram, words, and numbers, or symbols in this case, to represent this. So one thing we talked about was putting this as a diagram. And the diagram in this first one is I'm going to break it down to the rectangle and then some extra. And so what I'm going to do is if you were on your paper or something like that, you could draw a diagram to represent this whole thing. But what we're doing is we're not trying to draw each individual penny. So I could look at this and say, well, I have a 6 by 7 rectangle, right? I have a 6 by 7 rectangle. Now, if you're counting, you could say, hey, that's an 8 on top. Well, I'm going to end up representing those, those 8 right here. So this diagram is telling me I have 6 by 7 rectangle there with 8 left over, right? And if I were to use that in words, and I'm going to intentionally use some words here, I'm going to say, hey, I could say that I have, 6 groups of 7 with 8 left over. I have no idea why I wrote 8 as a number and the rest not. It just must have occurred to me there. So we can take that 6 groups of 7 with 8 left over, and we can write that into a mathematical sentence. Now, before I do that, you could be arguing, hey, I want 7 groups of 6 with 8 left over. Okay, sounds good. I won't argue that with you. It's just a different way of doing that even, right? And so if we write this as numbers and symbols, I would say 6 groups. Now, in math, I want us to start thinking about these parentheses as a group. So I have 6 groups of 7 with 8 left over, right? So this is how Oh, 8 left over. I don't have 8 left over. Yeah, goof. Right? We're going to fix all of that. What in the world was I thinking? I have 5 left over. I was just doing some numbers there and something was not working. I'm sorry. I have no idea what I was thinking. There. Right, with 5 left over. And if we calculate this, right, we would eventually find out that that's 42 plus 5, which is 7. Okay? 47. Sorry. I'm busy thinking about all these other numbers. Sorry about that. So, this is one way to represent that 47. Now, your neighbor, some other student, could have put this together, right? And they have the exact same number, but what they've done is they've done it different. So, to draw a diagram for this one, I would draw, again, I'd probably draw a rectangle, right? And I would put the 2 left over here. Yep, way to go. Could finally do it today, huh? Do it right, and it looks like it is a 5 by 3, 6, 9, right? 9. So I've taken and I've drawn that as a diagram, right? Now to put that in words, you could say 9 groups of 5 or 5 groups of 9. I'll say this is 9 groups of 5 with 2, I did it again, very odd, with 2 left over. Clearly I need to get more sleep, huh? So now let's represent this as numbers or symbols, right? 9, there's that word groups, so we're going to group it, groups of 5 with 2 left over. Again, we could calculate that to make sure that that's right. And here's the last example that's definitely unique, right? In this case, the diagram might look a lot different, right? And again, I don't want you to draw every single penny, so what we'll do here is we're just going to represent like this one group by saying 5 pennies. Now, I'm not drawing each penny, right? But clearly, in this case, my diagram takes a little bit more work. Does that mean that I have a bad system? Absolutely not, right? This last one, I need to put the 2. It's just a different way of doing it, right? All right, so now in here, how would I look at this? I again see 9, whoops. I see 9 groups of what? Of 5. With 2 left over. Right? And now we put that into numbers and symbols. In this case, it's going to look exactly like the last one. 9 groups of 5 with 2 left over, right? I think that's it, yeah. With 2 left over, okay? Going back up here, I could have even turned this one into 5 groups of 9, right? And then it would have just switched those 9s and 5s, would have worked, okay? So our goal today was to take this, is our ability to make multiple representations. From those multiple representations, can we put them into 3 things? A diagram, words, and then with numbers and symbols. All right, that sums up. If you have any other questions, please let me know.